your big feelings. So what really was that catalyst to create the account?
Good question. I think the straight answer is that I was sad enough for long enough that I was not expressing myself creatively, that one day it just came to a rock bottom where I was like, my only option is to try. No matter how embarrassing or cringy or weird, there's no other way besides giving it a try. And that was the catalyst that finally I secured the handle, I started making some drafts, and then evolving as I went. So the expectation was not that I would all of a sudden have all these amazing things to share. It was like, I'm just going to dip my toe in and see and give myself time to see what works and what doesn't and what my creative style really is. So yeah, you don't have to have like the full baked idea or a plan. It's more just like, okay, I can't not share. So it came from a void that I was feeling in like when I turned right around 30.
And the art that you're sharing, it's your own. It's not only your art, but it's also your words.
Hmm.
Can you explain a little bit of like that process?
I had like 30,000 photos on my phone, and I felt like I was sitting on this treasure that I was just not sharing, not using, not doing anything with. And anyone with any phone, any smartphone, like we walk around in our ordinary life and it's like there are all these beautiful things that we can capture. So I was like, okay, I'm going to use my photographs. I want the photographs to be original because there's a lot of artists that use photos from like Pinterest and Tumblr, which is cool. I love it. But I knew in my heart that I was like, I want to utilize what I have, this big bank of photos. And then the words, you just stare at the photo long enough until you can kind of ask, what is the photo trying to tell me? What do I need to hear? And then I just started unraveling it from there. So it is special to me because it's like, yeah, I at some point in my life took this photo and I might have been in a big terrible mood or a huge place of grief or a big upswing of self-doubt. And so for me, the photo like has all this connotation behind it, all these layers behind what the audience sees, which is just the final product. So it just means so much to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that too, I feel like is, from my perspective, felt through your work and through what you share because there are so many pieces to get to the finished product and all of the creativity that goes into each layer because it's like creating a story from the pieces that you have.
Yes, definitely. Like I'll gather the photos and try to make sure they go together well aesthetically, that they're edited similarly. And then I like stare at them for a long time and I'm like, what is the feeling? And I usually do call upon the feelings that I had when I took them. Sometimes not though. And just to say, like, I'm not a writer or a photographer. I've had no professional training. I didn't go to art school, none of the above. And so what it has shown me is that like anybody and everybody is an artist. The way we live our life embodies that. And rather than thinking like I shouldn't share because I don't have the education to back it up, or I didn't go get a master's of fine arts and learn how to write, professionally. None of that in this age really matters because of social media. So it's like the gift of having a platform where anybody can share.
Do you feel like you were always a creative person?
No, I was a suppressed creative. I'm the middle child, so my eldest sibling was like the exemplar of academic achievement and, went to Ivy League college and just did all these amazing things, went on to get her doctorate. And meanwhile, I'm like hobbling behind her trying to keep up because my heart was really not in academia, but I describe in some of my posts how I like force fed that onto myself. Like I was like, okay, yes, I must keep up. I must do all these things to feel like I'm worthy in this life. I have to get my master's. I have to get this job title before I'm 30. I have to make X amount of money. And the whole time I was sad, like this deep sadness where after work every day I would like lay down in bed and just stare into the abyss and think like something isn't right. Something's not aligned in my core. And what it was that I was ignoring this other part of me that was buried so deep underneath all this try hard academic, corporate person. And I think the main lesson is you can be both. And if you are one and you are curious about being more creative or writing or drawing or painting or whatever, that you should try it. Like if you're having doubt or you're having that voice in the back of your head, it's for a reason. And it just takes a little bit of courage to be bad at something and just say like, okay, I'm going to try it. So when I started trying, first I started watercolors and I was like, oh, that doesn't feel like it's it. Then I tried embroidery and I was like, okay, fun, but not it for me. And then I tried cookie decorating. I mean, you name it, I tried it until finally I was like, wait, I want to use my photographs and put collaged words on top. So it took a lot of experimentation and an invitation to follow the doubt that I was feeling about the way I had lived my life for like 30 years.
It is an invitation, that creative spark that you have in yourself. I know it's easier said than done to follow it or even know where to start when that's not something that you necessarily have experience with. That fire is inside of you. I would love to hear tips or even your own experience, maybe a little bit of both, what that looks like to vulnerably start tapping into that part of yourself.
Yes, such a good question. And I will say, like, someone DM'd me yesterday and they were like, Nicole, how do I do this when I have so much fear? And I was like, you do it with the fear. That's how you do it. You just have to. And the first recommendation I can make is start tuning in to your feelings and your mindset and where you currently are. That was the first thing I did. I started reading more material that would help me kind of understand, like, where am I in my self-love journey? Where am I in my self-actualization journey? And then I started doing probably the most important thing that I recommend, which was, and it sounds so weird, for the first time in my life, my adult life, I would go on walks and I would kind of just look around and notice things I never saw before, like a particular colored butterfly that only showed up in like April or May, or that the sun set this way in January, but this way in February. And I just started looking at the world around me in a way that was more in observation and in awe versus just like taking it for granted. Because as an adult, like, we're so caught up in our jobs and our friends and keeping up with everything, and we forget sometimes that, like, wow, we have this rare opportunity to just exist and be in this space and time. And so I had that like dawn on me, and I would go on these walks in the mornings and just look around. And that's one thing I definitely recommend, is like connect with nature, connect with things that are moving at a slow pace, and wherever you can, like, adopt that mentality versus like the constant grind and the constant pressure that we put on ourselves. And then make some drafts, you don't have to show them to anyone. You don't have to post them, but like, just start. Sometimes it even helps just drawing what you imagine it will look like. Write. If you have it in your heart to write, just get a journal and write. I think the only thing that separates people who are creating and sharing and people who aren't is not talent or ability or wisdom. It's just the willingness to try and look potentially really weird to people that you went to high school with or whatever. And then my final tip would be, once you have the first iteration, like, you ask yourself, how can I improve this? How can I make it more engaging, more authentic, more aligned with what it is, the message that I want to share? That's kind of how it unraveled for me. I'm trying to think of what other things happened in that time of my life. Finding a creative community too, and trying new things, just like putting it, whatever you can think of to shake up your normal routine. For example, my friend here in Austin was like, oh, I'm going to have a cold plunge retreat. And I was like, cold plunge? Like, what? No way. I hate being cold. And I end up going, and it was 30 degrees in Austin that day. And the cold plunge itself was like 30 degrees. So it was like an experience that changed my life, because I got in there and just did something I've never done before. So it opened another part of my mind, and everybody has that ability. It's so accessible. It's just a matter of being like, I'm going to try it and just see.
I loved what you said. It truly is the willingness to maybe look a little silly for a second. And also in that moment of saying, you know what, F it, I'm going to do it. In that brief second where you make that decision, you are showing yourself that you can do something challenging, that you
Mm.
have in your power to do something out of your comfort zone.
Yes. And people are there outside of the comfort zone, like reaching. There are other people up there that will root for you, cheer you on, tell you you're doing amazing, and they genuinely mean it because they're doing the same thing. Those are the people that you can align to, and that keeps you going. So funny because all these like, get out of your comfort zone. Comfort zone is where, dreams go to die or whatever. Yes and no, but also it gives this connotation that the non-comfort zone is like this dark, scary place, but it's actually full of brave people that are just going for it, like yourself. When I was in the cold plunge, I remember looking at my friend and saying, I have to get out. You had to do it for 3 minutes. And my breathing was at that point so slow and my mind was so clear that I was like, oh, I must be dying. For the first time in my life, I was like in a meditative state and I confused it with like danger because I'm so not used to that. And I said to him, like, I have to get out. And he goes, I'm getting in there with you. There was like 35 seconds left. And he put his entire like upper body in to grab my hands. And at that point, I was like in tears because I'm like, you are willing to go there with me. And those are the people that you can definitely find. You don't have to do it alone.
That is so special. That is so special. And I'll speak for myself here. There's a fear. My fear comes from the validity of the situation. Sometimes I feel like when you open up yourself to a new community and everybody there is so kind and so embracing,
Mm-hmm.
there's almost a second where I feel like,
Mm,
are they really this nice? Do they
yeah.
really want me to succeed as much as they're saying that they want me to? And this fear of not knowing if I can trust it, if I can trust them, if I can trust myself even. And in these moments of fear and reaching outside the threshold of my comfort, have been in situations and conversations.
Mm.
And so it's like believing in yourself enough to be open for an opportunity like that to happen.
Yeah. Like trusting that whatever happens, best to go in with intentions, not expectations. But let's say the interaction or the event or the act falls under your expectations, like that's okay. That's something that we as humans have to learn, like completely normal. Nobody gets it right the first time. Like I don't know anybody who goes into those situations fully confident and fully surrendering their trust, and such. But at least we can try. And I'll tell you how I live my life, which I don't know if I recommend, because it definitely has led to more pain and suffering, but like heart open, heart wide open, obviously with boundaries, but heart wide open in the sense that I'm going to give you the best of me, all I have. If I feel it reciprocated and that this is a safe place, great. If not, then it's okay for me to move on, but I'm at least going to give you all that I got. And I'm not going to hold back who I am, because I think that's where, when you get to that really authentic place, you trust yourself so much because you know you're living and operating in like an authentic and truly embodying the person you want to be. And so that helped me, like, okay, I trust myself. And yes, I've been hurt so many times. And yes, I overextend and I'm the one always doing the most, and and that's okay. That's how I want to be. It makes me feel good to know that I gave it my 150% when it comes to like being there for other people and trusting other people, and at the beginning, right? Meeting it with an open mind and an open heart. But it is not easy. What you're describing, that self-doubt, the wondering if you're valid, that's stuff that I deal with. Doesn't matter how many followers, how many compliments or accolades your work receives, there's always that voice that's like, but am I an artist? I think every human being feels that. I think it's like a universal feeling.
Absolutely. And what you do with that feeling
Mm-hmm.
is a testament.
Yeah, 100%. There's this incredible book that really changed my life called The War of Art. And it just describes that showing up in any creative act takes so much courage that you're always going to pump these feelings of resistance and self-doubt into your mind to protect yourself. Like, okay, if I'm just going to resist, I'm going to procrastinate, or no, not today, or man, that idea was dumb. That's all in self-preservation. So when you break through that wall and you're like, okay, no, I'm going to have the courage, even if it's just to take one set of photos or write one paragraph in my journal, you're slowly building up this tolerance to the self-doubt that eventually makes you like incredibly powerful, because you'll get to a place where you're like, I don't care who likes it. I don't care how it's received. I don't care if I'm making money off of this or not. I don't care about anything besides just the act of continuing to create. And there's this quote from the book that I'd say it to myself all the time, that I'd rather be the person in the arena getting stomped on by the bull, like a bullfight,
Mm-hmm.
than in the audience or in the parking lot. And that's just how I want to live my life. I'm okay putting myself out there and getting trampled, because it's just how I've chosen to live. And it's not for everybody, but everybody has that ability innately.
Yes. Thank you so much, Nicole, for saying that and for inspiring me to do the same, because deeply that's how I want to be living my life. And you just saying those words is an invitation, another invitation for me to choose myself.
Yeah, definitely.
Somebody listening, if it lands the same for them, they accept that invitation as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to say, I'm turning 34 this year. So I know that's not old, but like, it's never too late. It's never too early is what I'm trying to say. I think people, when I was in my mid 20s, I thought mid 30 was old. And here I am. So wherever it finds you at whatever phase in your life is the right time. And I just want to say that because I do wish I had started earlier, but I didn't have the tools or the courage or the ability to do it sooner. And that's okay. I did it once I could. And that's the important thing. Didn't matter that I was in my early mid 30s.
Yeah. I want to ask you, what do you tell yourself as somebody who does live with an open heart? And we know that the world is a crazy place.
Mm-hmm.
How can we remind ourselves of this way that we want to be living when we need that reminder?
Yeah, it's definitely easy to see the news and current events and want to close yourself off. I understand. And we as humans, like, will do anything to avoid pain. And obviously it's self-preservation. It's important to like avoid situations where you know you're going to be hurt, or people that you know have hurt you. All of that is very healthy. So not to say that open heart means go straight to the person that made you feel like shit and tell them to do it again. You know what I mean? Like,
No, of course.
nothing like that. Nothing like that. What I mean is, like, if I see something beautiful in someone, I'm just going to tell them. And sometimes it's as simple as like, oh, I love your necklace. Oh, I was at a bar once and I was like, oh, what drink did you order, to the booth next to me full of girls. Like, more open heart in the sense that, like, you don't have to be afraid of other people. And you don't have to, if you're being outwardly kind and friendly and nice, you don't have to hold that back. I don't know anyone who's received a compliment and then they were like, oh, I wish they hadn't complimented me or whatever. Like, just go for it. An open heart in the sense that, like, what you see is what you get. Like, I'm not going to hide the parts of me that I feel I'm still working on. I'll tell you, like, I'm still working on this. And I'm actually been in a relationship for 10 years. And I tell my partner all the time, like, I'm in a bad mood and I think it's because of this. So I'm going to do X, Y, Z to try to mitigate that. Like, communicating where you're at, but doing it in an open way, not hiding. And then the other part of it is being okay when it's not received like the way you thought or you wanted it to be received. That's totally fine. And at the end of the day, you go home back to your home where you create your life, and you can say, like, I know that I'm a kind and good person and that I try to spread joy and such. And That's what you get to, that's the last thought you get to have when you fall asleep. And it's a really good feeling.
I really like that. The last thought that you have when you fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Growing up, I've been talkative. And so being out and about, there'd be times I would spark up a conversation because that's just the way that I am and
Mm-hmm.
the way that my mom is. And so I grew up seeing her do it. And there was one time somebody there and they're like, oh, there she goes again. And I had allowed that to stick with me for a little longer
Mm.
than I would have liked. And it's something that I fondly look back on now because that is exactly who is showing up. And it really did take that time specifically, but then other similar moments with different flavors where I had to own it and really
Mm-hmm.
embrace all of me. It was then, and it is through those moments of, I think, radical acceptance that I've found the most profound growth or acceptance within my own struggles from that.
What a beautiful thing to be able to ask the person who makes your coffee every day, how are you? I mean, just looking and feeling outside of yourself. You know, you're not going to go and strike up a conversation with someone who's clearly like doing something important, but if we can make each interaction every day more meaningful, that just adds more beauty to our life. There's no downside, you know, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, that's
So
it's very true. What would you then recommend for somebody who's going to be implementing that more?
I would say reflect, yeah, just reflect on how you want how you want to show up in your life. And it's such a simple question, but if you had asked me in my 20s, if someone had asked me, how do you want to show up in your life? I would have been like, what are you talking about? Or I would have been like, I want XYZ job title, or XYZ salary, or XYZ group of friends. I would have named all these things outside of myself. And so just start with that awareness that like, okay, bring it back all the way back, strip it all away. If you have no job, no friends, no family, no anything, no home, no this, no that, what are you? Who are you? Why are you here? And use that as the basis of how you want to show up in your life. And that then can be woven into every aspect of your life. Like at work, when someone sends me an email that's, you know, a little spicy, I'm like, okay, I'm not even going to reply for the next hour and let them chill and then figure out how we can work through this. So you really start to then incorporate it, but asking yourself like what kind of person you want to be is definitely the first step. And I always I write everything. If I always have my notebook. And so reflecting on that on a daily basis is important. One of the biggest things for me is I was like, I want to be someone who doesn't react. I want to be someone who responds. And that was like a huge shift. I wrote down, I want to be someone who actually heals their wounds from the past, not just like carries them forward. So all these things have nothing to do with the physical world, have nothing to do with academic, corporate, nothing. It's all just inside. But it requires a certain level of awareness that I certainly didn't have. And I would say most people are working on it, right? Like we meet people we know that in their journey, maybe they haven't thought about these things. Maybe they have started. Maybe they're 15 years into their transformational journey and they're like completely enlightened. We're all on a different spectrum, but I think the very first step is realizing that like first and foremost, you're a human and how do you want to show up every day is a question you and only you can answer. And start just answering it piece by piece. That's what I did. I just started writing it down in my journal.
Yeah, it's not, I think oftentimes we might get stuck before the starting line because we see it as this big mountain or we see it as
Mm-hmm.
all of this work that we have to do. And rather, as you're saying, if we look at it piece by piece and work at that simplification of stripping down what isn't us and what we have carried
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, that simplification
Oh yeah.
is it.
And it's kind of like, how do you heal all your wounds? Well, you heal them one at a time. And I never thought of it that way until I literally made like a little T chart in my journal one day. And on the left side, it was like unhealed wounds. And on the right side, it was like almost healed wounds. And I was like, okay, which one of these, like, what is the biggest one? What do I have to do to forgive this person? What do I have to do to forgive myself? And then taking each one and like, okay, I'm going to move along, move along, move along. And then the art was just a way to describe like what I was going through with that process. It has to be boiled down, I think, to the simplest terms and then broken down even further to one thing at a time, you know. Breaking it down to the most actionable step is super helpful, but not always easy. So do you make art too?
I do. Yes.
Cool. What do
Yeah.
you make?
I have collaged for the last 7 years.
Mm.
And that's been probably the most incredible process that I have found that has allowed me to express these deeper emotions that I had yet to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, I've always been a creative person and have always loved painting, have always loved drawing, and have woven that creativity in pretty much in every aspect of my life. And when I'm not necessarily in a good headspace, I'll look back at my journal or I'll look back at any of the creative things that I've done
Mm-hmm.
recently. And so
Yeah.
I absolutely value the direct correlation of creativity and unearthing these emotions and processing these emotions that we feel.
Yes. It's so helpful. And it's so helpful to document like where you were then versus now. And I think one of the hardest things about my journey is I ask myself constantly, have I made progress? Have I made progress? Have I made progress? And it's like, how do you know? It's so frustrating. Like you can go to the doctor and they can tell you how many white blood cells you have and how tall you are and how tall you were through 5 years ago or whatever. But how do we measure our effectiveness in our journey of self or how well we're doing, right? And the journal and at least making things is a way to look back and say like, oh, at this time in my life, I was still struggling with this, but now I'm not anymore. So I must have made progress there. And that's the beautiful thing about it, because otherwise I'm like, how do we know? If you're not documenting your life and the feelings that you're having and the things that are happening to you, how do you know?
Exactly that. Yeah, I am so grateful to have this one journal in particular, but this art journal that I've carried with me from I was in 10th grade when I received it from Secret Santa. And it's a book that I can literally see that transformation that you're talking about
Hmm.
and the different experiences that have propelled me literally through life. So, how has creativity helped you process your emotions?
So much. Yeah, so much. And it's not just creativity in the sense of making things, but it's also creativity in all senses of life. Like if my friend's having a birthday, I'm going to make her a cake from scratch. Like that is a creative act. The way we do anything really is a creative act. And once you get in that mindset, you start to really notice things and see things and you become more present and you start, I really think, to let go of things that don't matter in the sense of like, they're not helpful. So why keep carrying them with you? And so creativity for me, it's funny because my sister picked up my journal from last year and she was like flipping through it. And I was like, oh my God, I would only ever let her even do that. But then she's like, would you ever share this with anyone? And I was like, take it, bury them with me, dude. Bury them with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because that creative act, and even it doesn't have to be scheduled, it doesn't have to be regulated, you don't have to set rules. I open my notebook and I'm like, whatever comes out, comes out. And sometimes I just grab colored pencils and I just, like today I was just literally putting like pink with blue with yellow, like colors that I like, and it's just a way of whatever is ruminating. Sometimes it's in your subconscious mind, at least has a way to sort of release the pressure. So creativity is an incredible healing tool. And I think a life full of creativity is so full. If there ever is a day that I go back to not writing and not creating, I think it would be a very different time in my life because those things have been so helpful. I don't know how you feel about it, but
Yeah. You are literally speaking my thoughts. And I really appreciate also that you put into perspective that creativity doesn't necessarily have to only look a certain way, but
hmm,
rather can be much bigger than you even realize.
yeah.
It can be everything.
And I don't know if you experienced this in your journey, but trying something and not being good at it was actually helpful. Like, because it opens up another part of your mind. Yeah, like maybe my watercolor painting was terrible, but it opened up another part of my mind to show me like, okay, maybe oil painting is better or possible for me. So it's not a waste of time to experiment. It's never a waste of time. And when you feel really, really stuck, it's good to try a creative act or activity that maybe you don't normally use to open up another part of your mind, right? And just like try something else. So I don't know if you've ever experienced that. That's been huge for me.
Yeah. 2024 was a year for me where I was really learning what I don't want in an effort to figure out what it is that I do want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't realize until I was in it that that was the truth of the experience, and that there's glory in making mistakes and in those experiments, because that is truly where the answer and those pieces of myself that I was ultimately searching for came from.
Oh yeah, 100%. They're like buried in the thing that just, you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I making a beaded bracelet on a Tuesday evening? You know what I mean? But it's all of it adds together. And I love that you said that you were trying to find what you wanted to leave behind, right? What you don't want to do anymore. Those were questions I never asked myself. Like, I just went through life on autopilot without even thinking about it. You know, thinking about what's aligned, what's not. Let me take what's aligned forward. Let me leave what's not aligned behind me. So the fact that you're doing it, you know, I commend anyone that's willing to really dig into their subconscious and their mind and say like, okay, how do I want to, yeah, it goes back to how do I want to live my life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it truly, truly is. And I mean this with like well, every fiber in my body. It is having people like you, accounts like yours, that help us in this unraveling process. And honestly, it helps you to start to question these pieces and these parts
Mm,
that you want.
that's so nice. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I really don't see myself as an artist. I see myself as an ordinary person that chooses to create, and everybody has that ability. Everybody has it. Whether or not they want to do it, that's totally up to them. But yeah, and I was inspired by other accounts. You know, it's like a chain of inspiration. So that's the cool thing. One of the cool things about social media. It's like there's always somebody there to pull you up. And when you get pulled up, you reach behind you and you take as many people as you can where you're going. So yeah, I always answer my messages, and I read every comment. It's probably not good because some comments are really weird. Delete the mean ones and stuff because I'm too sensitive, but it means a lot to me. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.